In this video, I discuss how we can terminate an information technology project successfully. In the case that you studied before this lecture, you learned that the so-called infrastructure replacement project, IR project at IBK had consumed more than $3 million over a year, and still the CIO could not think of any business benefits that had materialized from it. Therefore, Barton, the CIO, decides to terminate the project and fire the partner company Netifax. I believe his approach has some issues. I use a paper by Mahring et al. Uh, published in 2008 to show those issues and provide recommendation to the CIO. Terminating a project is categorized under project de-escalation. Here, I would like to describe the de-escalation process of an escalating IT project, a project that is going through a rise in uncommitted cost of resources such as labor, materials, equipments, a project that does not reach its milestones. We want to know what events take place during the escalation process. Uh, that's the goal. We want to know all the phases that needs to be passed so that a project can be de-escalated. The first phase is problem recognition. Authorities and powerful actors in the organization acknowledge the problem, and more importantly, uh, they acknowledge the seriousness of the problem. This recognition usually occurs as a result of pressure by internal actors such as non-IT business units, Tyson, for example, or external actors such as customers and the regulatory agencies of governments. Keep that in mind that those who supported the project may find it difficult to recognize that the project is going sideways. But without the recognition, you cannot go to the next phase. You cannot formulate a recovery plan if that's still possible. With regard to IVK, they have passed phase one. In fact, the top executives, brought up the question during an executive meeting. So they are ready. We need to check phase two for IVK. Phase two is about re-examination of the project. While the organization is still committed to the project, the people, the actors in the organization question the previous course of actions. They want to know what went wrong and why it went wrong. So in the case of IVK, the CIO, Jim Barton, uh, did the re-examination by talking to his direct reports like Tyra Gordon and Ruben, and also the project manager Palmer to figure out, uh, why, the IR project is, is not providing any values for the organization. In phase three, the organization looks for alternative paths. Note that identifying the alternatives is one story. Legitimizing those alternatives is another story. Those who champion the project will resist, since they may take this personally. They may believe that they lose their face and their power as a result of going for the alternatives. The partner company may threaten to file a lawsuit blaming your organization to increase the risk of um, terminating the project. Here, it is a good idea to hire external consultants to support the termination of the project. In my opinion, Barton uh, skipped this phase and jumped to an exit strategy. Ruben told him that he might hate the alternatives even more, that all companies come with baggage and complications. Nevertheless, Barton decided to go for phase four and fire NetEffects. In phase four, the organization tries, to find, an exit strategy. Uh, Here, those who champion the exit strategy try to sell their decisions to the powerful actors. The most important action here is to allow face saving. Top executives who back the failing project must be given good excuses to keep their face, to keep their faces. The cost termination must be reduced as much as possible. Only then you can have a more smooth implementation of the exit strategy. It seems that Barton has a good exit strategy. The new CEO is on his side. The project manager, Palmer, is leaving the company. And even if NetEffects try to ask for a hefty ransom to set IBK free of the contract, Barton can threaten them that he contact other clients of NetEffects who are probably going through the same experience or who were going through the same experience to avoid, paying the ransom. So phase four is fine, but regarding phase three, it was not, done in a good manner. The success of this de-escalation process depends on the existence of particular roles and their involvement in the process. First, we need messengers who can communicate their problems with the current course of actions. Uh, they provide evidence that continuing with the project is not viable. These messengers can be IT auditors or financial auditors, but vendors themselves can unwillingly play the role by announcing the delays in the projects. At IVK, there were no messengers. IT people like Tyra Gordon politically avoided raising the issue since IT were considered as, a bunch of naysayers, or there was this feeling that IT feels rivalry with the vendor, with NetEffects. The second key role is exit sponsors. Uh, these are people with formal authorities who push for the termination of the project despite the obstacles. CEOs and members of the board directors can play this role. At IVK, initially no one was the exit sponsor. At the end, the CEO and top executives have become exit sponsors. Finally, the most important key role in the de-escalation process is exit champion. Uh, These are people who are in charge of managing the termination process from recognition to exit strategy. CIO or business unit managers can play this role. At IVK, the CIO, Jim Barton, took this role. There are other key roles in the termination process, though not as critical as the previous three roles. First, exit catalysts can help keep the focus on the problem. They clarify and emphasize on the consequences of maintaining the existing course of action. They motivate the exit champion to follow with the termination process. This role can be played by IT managers, CIOs, and business unit managers. There was no exit catalyst at IVK. The role was played a little bit by Tyra Gordon when she explained the platform incompatibility between IVK's current applications and NetEffect's software package, Unix and Microsoft Windows. Ruben was not sure if termination was a good idea, so he cannot be considered as an exit catalyst. Exit blockers are another key roles in the de-escalation process. They try to hinder or slow down the termination process by placing restrictions on project abandonment. Vendors and former project champions can play that role. In our case, the manager of NetEffects played that role. He can ask for a hefty ransom of millions of dollars to set IBK free of the contract. Legitimizers such as legal consultants and IT consultants provide an external view, supplying arguments for termination. At IVK, there were no legitimizers. And finally, we also we need an scapegoat to blame for the failing project. These are usually former CIOs, CEOs, and project managers. At IVK, the role is played by Jay Palmer, the project manager, who is already leaving IVK to do a long-term executive program at the business school. To terminate a project, you need power on your side. The previous roles bring power to you. In this slide, I explain the basis of power defined as the ability to have someone comply your demands and behave in the way that you want. The first power base is reward power. The power to give reward, which can be impersonal rewards like promotions or uh, personal rewards such as respect or approval. Coercive power sources in threat of punishment, such as reducing salary. Expert power is defined as the power to get compliance since you are known as an expert in an area. Informational power is the power to use logic and information to convince someone to do something. Legitimacy is the power to prescribe a behavior. It roots in your position in the organization, your formal authority, uh, your capability to reciprocate, your ability to compensate for a behavior, and the ability to take responsibility for someone. And finally, the referent power is what celebrities enjoy. They can induce behavior because they are references for behaviors in a society, and some people identify themselves with these people. Knowing the power bases, now you can figure out, the why these key roles can make termination happen, or try to block or they have the power to block the termination of the project. Messengers have informational power and expert power. Exit sponsors have legitimate power and coercive power. Exit champions have uh, they enjoy different types of power, legitimacy, reward power, coercive power, as well as informational power. Exit catalysts enjoy informational power. Exit blocker use their legitimacy power. Legitimizers use informational power and expert power, and scapegoats are in a way a kind of opposite to the referent power. These roles and their power are required for different phases. Messenger's informational power and expert power is mostly required when the problem must be recognized. Exit sponsors' legitimacy and coercive power is required to remove the obstacles in the path of deciding to terminate the project. Similarly, the informational power of exit catalyst is used to remove those obstacles and push for making termination a decision, which is mostly related to phase 1 to phase 3. The informational power and expert power of legitimizers, such as consultants, are needed in all phases, in my opinion, but the researchers were not able to find its usage in phase 3. Finally, the anti-referent power of scapegoats are required in the last phase when we are terminating the project. Based on this paper, first I explain the current status of the termination process, and then I try to provide recommendations for uh, Jim Barton, the CIO. So he started with phase 2. The problem was already recognized by the top executives, and he was only required to re-examine, the project to figure out, what issues are and how serious those issues uh, are or can become. At the moment, he is in phase 4, that is implementing an exit strategy. He already went for firing NetEffects. The issue is that he did not spend enough time on phase 3, which he had to find alternative courses of action. As Ruben suggested, the alternatives can be even as horrible or even more horrible than net effects. Anyway, he is already firing net effects, but he is missing a legitimizer in phase 4, someone uh, who can provide, you know, uh, an external view uh, to suggest that the project is terminated. So it's not just the CIO who is suggesting for the project to be terminated, but we have some IT consultants, external IT consultants, external legal consultant who have the same suggestion. As Ruben suggested, he would step into the line of fire by uh, taking the full responsibility for this decision. And finally, he has missed an exit catalyst with informational power in phase 3, who could support him with a kind of comprehensive information about, the benefit of terminating the project, who could motivate other people to do that. So it would be great if he can send Tyra Gordon to all these business unit managers, to the top executives, or to explain, why it is not uh, viable to uh, keep the project running. So the consequences of maintaining net effects must be visible to the CEO and board. Maybe they don't have time to have meetings with Tyra, but at least Tyra can create a report to make things more understandable to them. The fact that the platform is incompatible with the resources, with the applications, with the kind of expertise that IBK has is a big issue, and that's the source of the problem. And this should be made clarified, uh, should be made clear to the top executives and the board. Pause here for a minute and answer this question as well. In the next lecture, I will go over IT governance, which is the subject of chapters 8 and 9.